All right, we're live on the stream. This is the
Okay.
spec sheet. Michael, give us a better
I'm
intro than I can do.
well,
Do
I'm sorry
better.
I'm not looking at my phone. I'm on the walking trail here.
Hey, we're
And
live.
yeah. Well, my phone's in my pocket and I've got the screen turned off just to save battery power and
Mhm.
so I'm not looking at the screen. I can't see when we actually go live. So I thought, well, I guess Curtis will awkwardly step in when that moment comes to pass. But so we were just
I think I
talking
did.
about how
I think I
you did
covered that.
exactly what I internally predicted you would do, and that's why Curtis and I have gotten on so well for 15 years now because we know one another so intimately in the way I just described. So
Mhm.
yeah, this is Spec Sheet. It's a show primarily about tech, where we talk about tech news. I think really you could summarize this show by saying Curtis brings the technical wizardry to the show, and I'm the old man who yells at clouds. That is what I do on this show. I complain and I get upset with things. But, pardon me, I'm on a walking trail here. So you're probably going to hear people ringing their bells as they ride past me on their bicycles and their e bikes. And I don't know how stable my cellular signal is going to be. In fact, I'm walking under a bridge right now.
I
We'll
mean, we
find out
wouldn't
if,
know if you hadn't told us. So, I mean, that's how good your connection is so far.
well, I'm dead center under a bridge right now. Can you still hear me? I'm kind of
Oh, yeah.
curious as a bit of an experiment. Literally, dude, there's
Mhm.
concrete below me, there is concrete and a road above me. I can't believe I didn't drop out
Yeah, you sounded
standing under
fine.
here. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Technology is totally
it
tits.
is amazing, isn't it?
Anyway,
You know what I've noticed? Sorry, I was looking at our viewer number, and even though every episode we put on Rumble, I have never seen where we have viewers on Rumble. We
well,
just had somebody watching us on YouTube who just stopped watching. I guess they saw it was my face, and they were like, "No, nope,
well,
I'm out."
maybe what some people do, I think, is they pop in and see that we are doing a live show, and they say to themselves, "Okay, I'll come back to this later." And then that's what a
Yeah,
lot of people do. I don't think sitting or I don't think attaching yourself to a device for the entire duration of the show is something that a lot of normal people are in really a position to do. I think a lot of people have to kind of take whatever they're listening to or watching on demand, and I expect our listening audience is no different. But just before we came on, one of the things I was saying to Curtis, and by the way, if I sound a little winded, it's because I'm a fat ass and I'm actually exercising as we're doing this show. I'm actually physically exerting myself while hosting a broadcast of some sort.
yeah.
So,
We'd like to ask the listening audience to please join along, because if you aren't huffing and puffing, then we're not doing our job right.
I'm trying to be less fat. But anyway, so we were talking just before the show about this mechanism we use to bring the stream to you. It's called Restream, and it's essentially a funnel where you alone or you and a co-host can join up in one centralized location, and then your video that you're creating together gets funneled out to whatever destinations you've chosen. And those could be YouTube, those could be Rumble, Twitch, any number of other destinations. But one of the weaknesses of it, and we have complained about that on this show previously, is the fact that, it's kind of a staple of broadcasting. A lot of people don't realize this. When you see somebody in a radio station talking into a microphone and they're listening through headphones, they are actually, if they're working on a terrestrial radio station, a traditional radio station, they are actually listening to air. In fact, the last terrestrial radio station I worked at, they were so ghetto that they did not have a proper air monitor. So I actually went and I brought in my Sangean
I can
ATS
imagine this.
909 shortwave radio and sat it right next to me in the studio and had my headphones plugged into that. And I used it every day to monitor air. So you are literally monitoring air. You're literally hearing what the listener hears. Well, one of the fundamental flaws, this is where it's like the tech world thinks it understands broadcasting, but in many ways it demonstrates that it frequently really doesn't. And that's one of the things that has annoyed me about the podcast era, the internet streaming era, the internet broadcasting era, is the bar for entry has been set so low that people who, and look, I'm not trying to be some radio snob here. I'm not trying to be some broadcasting snob here. But the barrier for entry has been set so low that pretty much anybody can now broadcast to a live audience with exceptional audio and or video quality. And this has all been put together by people who also wouldn't have been able to do this but for the bar being set so low, the barrier for entry being set so low.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
The people who work in tech and set up these mechanisms that everybody uses to get their live stream going. And so some of the things that you see are things like this, where they overlook the fact that you as a broadcaster this is such a fundamental basic of broadcasting, that you as the broadcaster need to be able to hear what your audience hears. You need to be able to hear yourself exactly as your audience does. And if you can't hear that, it really removes an entire dimension from what it is you're doing, from the product you're delivering. And Restream is a perfect example of this. So I can hear Curtis. Curtis can hear me. But I don't hear myself if I'm not plugged into a mixer. And even if I am plugged into a mixer, I'm just going to hear the levels in my mixer as I have them set up. I'm not going to hear what the audience is hearing. Right. And so therefore, when we finish the product, we have a product, Curtis.
The product, yes.
when the product is done. Yeah, let's refer to our show as a product. So at the end of it all, when everything is done baking in the oven, we have no idea what the levels are going to be like that you, the listening audience, are going to hear. And that is a major flaw in this system. Can you still hear me, Curtis? Okay. It appears as though... Okay, can you still hear me, Curtis?
Yes.
How long have I been gone?
We heard most of what you said. Keep going.
Okay, so it's just a big flaw in the system, and I don't know if the fact that I went away just now is the result of me having my screen off. I'm going to try it again, and if I don't hear anything from you for a good while, like just occurred, I'll know that turning my screen off is a no-go. But so, yeah, that's one of the weaknesses of this, and it's one of my gripes, one of my complaints. Mm-hmm. The news happening right now, Trump has been shot. There's just no way we're not going to talk about that tonight. It happened about, I'd say, an hour and a half ago. He was delivering a speech in Pennsylvania. Do you know what the name of the town is in Pennsylvania, Curtis?
I don't know the name of the town, but hold on, let's see. I just brought
Bethel,
up Twitter. It's like
Bethel.
I know the county was like B-U-K County.
Bucks?
Is it? Let's see. So, no, sorry, Butler County.
Butler, okay.
Yeah, Butler County Fire and EMS. Yeah,
but I guess it doesn't really matter.
Just so you know, on the screen, I'm sharing Twitter. Our X, our handle is. Let me tell you what it is really quick.
Spec Sheet Tech.
Is it Spec Sheet Tech? Okay, yeah, that's probably. Yeah, you're right. Spec Sheet _Tech. Is where you want to go to stay up to date with all the latest, because we do whatever X is called so often. But I do want to mention one thing really quick. So like you mentioned, that's really the story of the moment right now. So like that's the news that we'll discuss. But I want to try something different with this episode too. We typically haven't got the system in place to be able to call in totally locked down as we've moved to Restream. But if you do want to talk, if you want to join, and I haven't, like, Michael's like, oh no, what am I doing? But if you want to come on with us, you can. Just go to X, find Spec Sheet _Tech, send me a message, send us a message on it, and I'll send you the link to join, and you can join the live stream and talk, and you'll just connect straight through Restream.
But just know before you come on, we're not going to just let you go on for 20 minutes. You're not going to co-host the show. Come in, make your point, and then sayonara. We gotta keep a rhythm to things going. That's one
Yeah.
of the caveats with this. It's gotta be a rhythm to stuff. So pop in, make your point, and pop out. How do they do that again?
So right, like the easiest thing would be to just I'll just post it with the link to it in the chat. Actually, that'll be easier. I was going to say like doing it through X would be the easiest way. Send a direct message, but let me find that link and yeah, you
Okay.
can just click the link and join. And like Michael said, just if you have questions, ask them. If you have a point you want to make, within reason, make the point. We may or may not comment on it, and then we're going to move on. It's
We don't really care so much about the content of what you bring to the show. Just try and make it snappy. That's all.
yeah,
So yeah, there now you know how you can join the show, and we are eventually going to have a proper mechanism for taking calls. But one of the things that has kind of sidelined that, at least for me, has been the fact that I've been using an iPhone. And we talked in a previous show, I guess it was not the last show, but the one before, about the complexities of connecting an iPhone to a mixer and the fact that the only thing you can do is send media bus audio between the mixer and the iPhone, but you can't send communicative audio. So if you're having a Skype, boy, I'm such an old man. If you're doing a Zoom conference, or if you're actually having a legit phone call, um, anything of that nature, you can't pipe that audio into the mixer from the phone and back to the phone. Well, I'm going entirely Android and Windows. In fact, I ordered a Galaxy S24 Ultra last night, and that thing is going to be just, I'm so excited. It's just such a beast of a phone, Curtis.
I'm
Um,
really interested. You're the guinea pig to see, am I going to try this again?
I
Especially
don't,
again, like we've talked about, like uh, Dex, right? Is the
right.
yeah, that's going to
Yes,
be
on the
for some
previous.
reason I doubted myself the moment I started to say it. But yeah, like I really want that to be useful because like we've been both complaining about and have multiple articles that can prove our point. There's so much power in these devices. Let me use it.
Exactly. And
And
uh,
yeah,
Dex, by the way, just to quickly say, is the system whereby you can connect your Samsung phone to a monitor, and you now have a full-blown PC experience on your monitor with access to all of the apps, files, features, and otherwise stuff you might want from your phone, just presented to you in a desktop form factor.
right. Yeah, it's
Uh,
so
so I'm gonna be using Dex, of course. I'm gonna be filling Curtis in on my experiences with it. It is my hope that after how many years have you been explicitly and exclusively, as the tech bros say, using the iPhone as your daily driver?
my daily
Were we
driver.
at
Yeah.
about 5 years now of
Oh
that?
yeah, it's been I would say probably 6 years, 6 to 7 years now
Wow.
since I had my last Android.
Wow. I think things have probably changed so much in ways that you
So
just have not been apprised of since
so I
then.
take that back. I do use Android. I have an Android phone too. It's just not my
But not
daily
for
driver.
pleasure, and yeah, not for pleasure and
Right.
just, doing what you personally want to do with your mobile device. I think that's entirely work, right?
Well, yeah. This other phone, it's my son tried to make the change and got a gaming phone, the Razer phone too,
Uh-huh.
and I was amazed when we were looking at it because this phone at the time, which is a several-year-old phone now, but the specs on it for the price was so much better than everything else out there. It was a great phone for a low cost, and he had it for a little bit, then realized there was like a couple things within the Apple ecosystem he couldn't do with messaging, FaceTime, which of course you have Android equivalents to all of those, but switched back. And so I had this phone that I paid off, and I just kept it and used it as my secondary phone because I do not necessarily Android app development, but web and application development where I want to test it on a Android. So it's the problem with this phone is I need to install a custom firmware if I want to go to the more modern Android versions. Like I'm not even sure what the last supported one it had was, but like I'm sure your Galaxy would blow this away.
Well,
log
it's
into
going
it.
to be fabulous. I think I'm going to certainly be incorporating this into uh, how we put the show together, and it's going to make interactivity, at least from the standpoint of phone calls, much more doable,
Yep.
much more stable, and much more practical. But it's going to be a little bit. As I said on the last show, I'm in the process of moving, and my kids are out of the country, and the way I'm going about moving is rather convoluted. So as a result, I won't be settled in to my new house until the end of this summer. And but the timing is great because it's good that my kids are not here while all of this chaos and in between stuff is going on. And so once I am settled into my new house at the end of the summer, when everybody comes back from overseas, that's when everything's going to be set up, and we're going to be presenting shows to you in our native format, our
Right.
natural habitat. But until then, it's going to be a little bit wonky like this. But at least give us cred. You know, we're trying, we're doing something.
Right.
We tried. So take a look at our website, by the way, specsheet.tech. I'm sorry, specsheet.tech. If you'll just type that into the address bar of your browser, you'll be whisked away to a website that contains all of the links that you could possibly care about, including a link to our Patreon, which we would highly appreciate you signing up for. It's just, I think you can do any amount you wanted to, you know, even if
You
it's a
can.
dollar a month. Just that small gesture is something that would really just kind of give us a little boost, and it really helps motivate you to continue this and to set aside whatever you have going on in your personal life to peel away and do this. That for me has always been one of the biggest challenges in doing this sort of thing, is just peeling away from day-to-day life to be able to do this. So that's very motivating. We want to encourage people to consider that, and in
And we thank
advance I'll
those
say we
who
really
already are
appreciate it.
doing that. It's
Yes.
very helpful.
And you know, we've had a little gap here without a show for a few weeks, and we're keenly aware of the fact that there are people paying for us to do this, and so we appreciate you sticking with us through these trying times.
So InnerReach in the chat is asking where you're moving. So if you don't mind giving us your address and social security number,
Yeah,
we would
Jesus
appreciate it.
Christ. Do you not InnerReach? Have you not seen how things work on the internet over the course of the last decade?
Here, I'll bring up a
that
Google map. Let's see if we can guess the address. Give us 3 guesses within a zip code.
3 guesses within a zip code. Good
There's
Lord.
no way we would get it. I'm joking.
So yeah, once that's all buttoned down, though, I'll be InnerReach. Could you upload a video of the interior of your home? I want to see how I want to see what sort of motif you've gone with, and we'll determine what my next move is after I see that uploaded video. So Trump was shot about an hour and a half ago. He was at this rally in Pennsylvania, and there is a long form video of the shooting that I saw only for the first time about maybe an hour ago. Trump is speaking. Suddenly, shots ring out. You see he's turned to the right as he's speaking. His head is turned to the right, and you see his right arm reflexively go up toward his ear area as shots are ringing out. And then suddenly, the Secret Service lurch from behind him and grab him, hustle him down to the ground, and they form a human shield around him for probably a good 45 seconds or so. And eventually they start rising up. And as they're rising up, thankfully the mic is still on. And you can hear Trump saying, "Let me get my shoes, let me get my shoes." And so they rise up. And I guess, you know, he just wanted to leave the stage with some dignity. Or he's got lifts in his shoes. One of those two. He didn't want to be walking around without those lifts. I don't know.
Well, that is interesting. I didn't catch that part. I'm trying to see if I can find the video of the whole thing as you're saying, because I'm actually sharing right now on X.
I sent that to you. I messaged it to you.
Yeah, that's the problem. I'm on my Windows laptop.
Okay.
That's again
Well, it's
another
all
thing
over
that's
the place.
annoying, because why can't there be an iMessage app for Windows and vice versa? But I should have warned everybody that we are going to be sharing, you know, videos and photos that came from the event. Like basically, we're sharing Twitter in real time, so like we can't police everything that comes through the stream. So I just showed that picture, which was of Trump right after he stood up from the Secret Service, so there is blood on it, and was going to show the video. So some of the things could be triggering to people. I apologize. Feel free not to skip this episode right now if you don't want to see or talk about any of those types of things.
I don't think any of this is too terribly bad, but we will be showing a colonoscopy in about 45 minutes. That part of the show.
When I shared that with you, I didn't think you were going to show it to the group. I thought you were just interested in seeing a video of that happening to me.
That part of the show might be bothersome for some, but the Trump shooting, I think we can all handle it. But anyway, so they form a bubble around him. They slowly rise up. Thankfully, the mic's on. He's saying, "Let me get my shoes. Let me get my shoes." And they're like, "We need to get you to safety, sir. We need to get you to safety." And then they start to whisk him away, and he makes them stop. He says, "Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute." And he pumps his fist up in the air, and the crowd starts going insane and chanting USA, USA. And at the exact moment that he's pumping his fist like that, a photographer in front of the stage just below him snaps a photo that is clearly going to be one of the iconic photos of this century. I mean, it's just one of those moments. It's either the guys raising the flag at Iwo Jima, or it's the little girl in Vietnam with napalm burns running naked in the street, or it's the Viet Cong being shot by an American serviceman in the head. These photos, they're just certain photos that over the course of time have embedded themselves in the public psyche, and in some instances, in particular, the American psyche, the American consciousness. And this is going to be one of those photos. And I think that it's impossible to believe that this hurts Trump's chances of getting into the White House. I mean, look, there's no way I'm going to talk about this subject without it getting a little bit political. So anyone who has a problem with that is free to shove off forthwith. I'm sorry. There's no way that this topic is going to be discussed without things getting a little bit political. But there's no way this is going to result in Trump having a more difficult time getting reelected president of the United States. In fact, I suspect that this is going to result probably in a multi-point increase in his polling. And I mean, one of the things that jumped out at me as I was watching all this.
Yeah, I'm going to play the video too as you're talking.
Just go ahead and play it with the audio. Turn the audio up. I'll shut up for a minute.
All right, let me know if you can hear it. Can you hear that?
No.
I don't hear it.
Okay. Well, I can't see it because I'm not looking at my phone. Actually,
could you hear it though?
I am looking at my phone. No, I didn't hear a thing.
Okay, hold on. Okay. Let me try this again. Just a moment. It's supposed to be sharing it with the audio, but I'll see if I can fix that. All right, you can still hear me, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now tell me if you hear this.
Nothing.
You said nothing?
Nothing.
All right, hold on. Let me try one more time. Maybe it won't let me play video. Oh, wait. That's the problem. Okay, I'm going to start this over.
Hey, it's a deer.
Oh, nice.
About 30 yards away, just calmly eating grass, looking at me.
And let me do one other thing here really quick.
It's a doe-eyed little deer, just bending his tail lips down to the water, having a sip of water. And then bam!
There's two of them. Oh, look at them. They're just sitting there looking at me. I'm not going to hurt you, fellas. I'm not going to hurt you.
Let me change.
You know, I would love to be one of these people that sit on my porch and just slowly befriend a herd of deer.
Yeah, but then one of them's going to have rabies and you're going to not realize it. And have you ever watched videos? I mean,
is that really a problem?
I don't know, but that's where my brain goes. Like,
yeah, that's not where I'm going. I wouldn't worry about that.
You also brought in our mascot, the squirrel, so that could have had rabies too. Well, it wouldn't have as young as it was, but
these two deer are literally They are standing. They're standing. The closest one is about 50 feet in front of me, maybe 60.
Hmm.
And they're just kind of looking at me. These
Put
deer
'em on
have
the phone.
obviously. Look, what do you think about what happened in Pennsylvania today? Uh, they've obviously, to some extent, been domesticated. They're used to city life and people.
Yeah.
So, what was the point I was? Oh, I was listening to Scott Adams earlier, a couple of days ago, and he was making the point that he thinks if Trump wants to be the president again in 2024, what he needs to do is find some way to humanize himself in the eyes of the American people. And one of the most productive ways, Scott Adams said, Trump could go about this is to host a forum where he actually sits down in a room with people who are his regular people, mind you, not political operatives or insiders or talking heads or pundits, just regular people who don't support him, have no intent on voting for him, and who are just maybe hardcore Democrats, and just have a conversation with them and let them speak to him about the hoaxes that have been perpetrated, such as the Fine People hoax, the bleach drinking hoax, the all of these different things that have been perpetuated for the purpose of political benefit to one particular side. Let him sit in a room and just talk to these people about this stuff and humanize himself. He needs to humanize himself, Scott Adams said. That is the
Mhm.
key to becoming president come January of 2025. And as this event occurred today, I looked at this and I thought to myself, my God, what Scott Adams was suggesting has not only just happened, but it has happened by orders of magnitude.
Your phone cut out there enough to where it drug out that magnitude. It was great. You couldn't have planned that better. But you are breaking up now.
Okay, I'll turn around. I might be going into a bad area. What Scott suggested actually did happen today, but it happened by orders of magnitude on a greater scale, a grander scale than what Scott
Mm-hmm.
suggested.
I think you're really starting to cut out.
In terms of, pardon, hello. Can you hear me now? Okay,
I hear you now. Yep. Well, no, it's
headed back
getting
into
rough. It's getting really rough.
my good signal. Can you
Okay,
hear me
let me
now?
play the video really quick
Okay,
and then
good.
come back and finish
What
that
happened today?
thought. Okay, I'm going to play this video.
Okay, it's going to get better.
You're like breaking
promise,
up
I'm sorry.
bad.
Okay.
So give it just a moment. Let me play it. This is 2 minutes. Like, try to see if you can get to a spot with better signal.
We see something that said, take a look at what happened.
Move to spare. Hold. When you're ready. On you.
Ready?
Move.
Up.
Move. Go.
Hawkeye's here.
Hawkeye's here, move it to the spare.
Spare, get ready. Spare, get ready.
We ready? Are we good? Shooters down. Are we good to move?
Clear.
Let's move. Let's move.
We're clear.
Come on.
Let me get my shoes.
Got you, sir. I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold that in your head, it's bloody.
So we got to move to the bus. Move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
Okay, let's shoot down. Let's shoot.
Watch out.
Wait.
All right. From that point, it's just him getting put in the vehicle. So
Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. Am I okay now?
yeah, you are.
Okay. It's amazing how precise the signal degradation is where I'm at. I know which direction to physically walk back toward in order to get my cell service back. But it was like Scott was suggesting he needed to humanize himself by having this meeting with these people and just talking with regular people who oppose him. And I think that was a fabulous idea. But then this event happens today, and it occurs to me, holy crap, this humanization that Scott Adams suggested Trump needed in order to win the 2024 election just happened on orders of magnitude beyond what Scott had suggested. Here is this man standing on a stage bleeding from his head with blood on his face. Red blood, what's the word? Extinguishing from his body.
Yeah. I would just go with dripping, but there you go. That sounds more dramatic.
Yeah.
But
how much more humanization can there be than a guy staying on a stage bleeding?
yeah, what's interesting though, like that's the first time I've watched that video that I just shared. That was straight from Trump. That was shared by some famous person, but it came from the Trump campaign. And like, I just can't get over the weirdness of that video. And we can talk about that later, but just, it's even weirder to see it there. Like I get the point you're saying, and I don't disagree with the idea that humanizing yourself in any situation where people are trying to point out flaws of yours or fake things, like they're trying to build up a case against you that's not built with the context of reality to it or truth, that humanizing is the right direction to go. Like if you and I started like a crisis management company right now, like the easiest advice to give to any person who's going through a situation where they're being attacked by people with claims that are completely false or even partially false, actually, you know what, even true, all of those scenarios, the easiest answer always is the straightforward answer is the hardest one, which is go face the people who are hearing that stuff, head on and do what you said, humanize. Like, I don't care who you are going through a crisis situation, just being there, speaking, and letting people know that you're a vulnerable person is almost everything you need to start the redemption campaign or prove yourself innocent. But you got to show that your vulnerability as a real human being first. And I think that's the heart of what you're saying is this moment shows a vulnerability of Trump. It has all kinds of other implications too. And I want to be clear, like from my point of view, I'm not, I'm very independent in this presidential election. I'm not a Biden supporter. I'm not a Trump supporter. There's the whole conversation we could have about what happened with the debate that, obviously plays into the post this incident reaction. But just from the point of view of everything Trump is facing as a candidate trying to be elected, I agree that this fits that criteria of it's a humanizing event.
Well, I'm not going to hide from the fact that I am a Trump supporter, and I have withheld my political opinions from this podcast for the purpose of enabling this to appeal to the broadest demographic possible. Plus, it's an acknowledgement of the fact that everywhere we turn in our day-to-day lives, we're bombarded with politics. Politics is in every aspect of our day-to-day lives. There's no part of your day-to-day life that isn't touched in some way by politics, particularly in this environment. So I've really sought to be careful about my opinions on various things when participating in this show for the purpose of not alienating people as a result of my politics, because I know that feelings are intense these days and families are breaking up because of politics. Brothers and sisters are not communicating with siblings are not communicating with one another because of politics. So why would I do a show of this sort and come rub my politics in everybody's face? But
well, part of it
I
for me
don't
too.
want to try and talk about this subject and what occurred today while simultaneously tiptoeing around my real feelings. I'm just sort of done with it. I'm not saying that I'm going to be political on our shows that we do going forward, not at all. In fact, I will continue explicitly attempting not to be. But I just see a situation here where there's a guy running for president, and I have never seen the powerful and elite forces of the world so thoroughly and entirely aligned against one human being in any circumstance and at any time in my life. I've never seen that, from the mainstream media to Wall Street to pretty much any mainstream business interest you can think of. Everything, every single thing is aligned against this guy. And that inherently makes me suspicious of the people who are against him. I've always been someone who was naturally inclined not to go with fads. I remember in the 4th grade, everybody running around with slap bracelets. Oh, I don't want that. Everybody's got them.
Well,
I remember
slap
everybody
bracelets
watching
are like-
Alf. I wanted nothing to do with it.
I would say those slap bracelets are the best analogy to what I can, because like I majored in political science. I worked at a nonprofit, was my how my career started. So like I used to live for politics and really wanting to make sure I had a balanced approach to everything that was information based and trying to find the policy that made the most sense. And that didn't mean I got everything right, but I tried to hear as much as I could, especially from opposing views. But like I would say modern politics, because there was a period of time when I just disconnected myself from it. And it's partly because I believe that the realism behind it, and you and I have talked about this privately, like it turns out like when I try to take a more reasoned approach to looking at our political landscape, that it was well before I was born that politics became a joke, and it's more like WWE wrestling than true attempt at having a forum for discussing ideas. But your slap bracelet thing really rings to me, because it's like everyone's slapping themselves with this bracelet. They know it hurts, but they keep doing it.
I don't know. I mean, I think politics has always been like this. It's just
that's
that
what I'm
you
saying.
and I are young relative to our nation's political history. I mean, if you went and saw some of the newspaper articles printed during the revolutionary days, things that political enemies said about one another in newspapers, I mean, I'm just like accusing one another of the most heinous things without any concern of being sued for libel or slander, without any journalistic sense of ethics or integrity, no concern whatsoever. Just, he said it, print it. You know, I mean, just terrible stuff.
Oh yeah.
I failed to come up with an example at the moment, but it's easily Googleable.
Oh yeah. I mean, you could go back and look at like, the Andrew Jackson campaign of trying to win and having to actually be anti-establishment and follow the people. There's all kinds of cases of what you're saying, and you're right. Like that's the thing, is it's easy to put yourself in the bubble of what you're experiencing, because like I started my separation from believing that like the game of politics was real and had a planned outcome that was towards the betterment of American society and then the world potentially as a result of that, around the time of the Iraq War. Like that started to make me, I guess you could say 9/11, but really it's more the Iraq War that was the problem for me. When our country took the veil off of, we are going to preemptively attack, and like there's not enough fact behind it. Like I don't want to go all the way into that, but like that's when it started to get to me, where I became like an outside observer to things, trying to understand, okay, well, what's the motivations behind all these people? But ultimately if you have bad information you're working from, you're going to make bad decisions. And I think both of the major presidential campaigns are working from that same situation. So it really ends up being the game of politics is different than what I thought it would be. And I think when you do take a longer view of it, it has always been this messy thing, and it's not the noble pursuit that you try to put yourself in when you're trying to play the game of politics.
Well, and also whatever particular group at the minute believes it has nobility, you can just take that with a grain of salt. Great example. The Iraq War was a problem for you. It was a problem for a lot of people. It was a problem for millions. And now it's not a problem any longer for those people because the guy who waged that war doesn't like Trump, and that's enough to put that on the back burner. That's no longer a problem. I mean, you see what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah.
Integrity gone, nobility
Yeah.
gone, principles gone. None of it meant anything. It never meant anything. It's all team play. It's all team rooting. It's all people just vying to win something. It's no different than sitting in a bleacher and hoping that your stupid Super Bowl team wins. It's got no bearing on the integrity of the people participating or the validity of their views whatsoever.
Yeah, that's the thing. So like our analysis of it should be understood through that lens. You might lean a direction in terms of like there's enough of what this politician is saying that you agree with, but you understand all of what you just said at the same time. So you're not a sycophant for any party. And like for me, I really feel like, and it's been a couple elections now. Well, it's been a lot of elections. I take that back. The last candidate that I actually thought I believed in terms of being able to rise above something was John McCain. His last election when he was, his first election when he was the Maverick, and like that wasn't even real. And like look how much he changed as a politician and public figure after that. Like that when he actually finally ran for president, that guy wasn't at all the same person that I thought the Maverick version of McCain was. And then like as you look farther back, there was a different version of him even before he became the Maverick character. And I really just preferred the idea of somebody who was potentially centrist that is looking to reach across aisles for real. But that wasn't real. None of it was. But I've been disenfranchised as a voter, even though I believe in the importance of voting for a long time now. And I don't see anyone on the political horizon that is actually going to like inspire me again to those levels that I had, because I'm just too disillusioned.
You know, I kind of got a chuckle there when you misspoke and said the last time John McCain ran. That was when you were really on board. I was like, wow,
Right.
that was his worst possible era. I mean, wow, that's
Well,
Curtis. What happened there? But
I'll be taking a cognitive test shortly after this.
I'm more a fan of the Keating 5 cheat on your wife version of John McCain. You know, it's,
Well, that's the thing is like once
I
you
go back to the
realize
80s,
that,
bro.
yeah, like you realize that like the Maverick version of him was all it was all just play. It was just to amass a base, make money.
Well, and just as an important point to make, the base he was amassing was the mainstream media.
Right. Yeah.
Anytime, because John McCain was a typical Republican who realized that the mainstream media industrial complex was aligned against him because of the political party he belongs to. So therefore, anytime he could get one of these people in the mainstream media to do something other than spit in his face when he walks past them, he got so erect at the prospect of this occurring that he would do anything he could, despite his own interests, despite his own party's interests, to give the boot to the promises made to his constituency. Anything he could do to curry favor with the mainstream media, he would do. And that's where he got this Maverick thing. It wasn't because he was really a free thinker. It was just simply because he was willing to step outside of the party infrastructure if it meant he was going to get some good news coverage. That's all it was. It was just self-preservation. It was self-interest. It had nothing to do with, I'm John McCain and I'm going to do what's right. You know, it wasn't that at all. It was just, if I can get some good media coverage by doing something other than what these hacks in the media would think a regular Republican would do, then I'm going to do it. And that's all his Maverick persona came down to. I'm so glad that guy is gone. I'm so glad that he is no longer in politics. I'm so glad he's. No, I don't care. I think he was a dangerous man. He was a dangerous man. He never saw a problem in this world that he wanted to solve with anything other than a bomb. That guy. And on the tail end of his political career, he sat in a Senate committee accusing Rand Paul of being a Russian agent. As Rand Paul walked out of the room. Yeah, I'm glad that guy's gone. I don't give a shit what happened to him either. I'm glad he's gone. Good.
Do you remember when we did our bet on Rand Paul and I had to pay you for him winning?
Wasn't
his
it
seat?
$15 you had to pay me?
Yeah, something like that. Like, I really like. I don't know. Like,
I framed
was the
that
sign,
money.
Yeah, that was the sign for me that I didn't understand the motivations of the average voter anymore, because Rand Paul really, he's a confusing one too, because he turns out he's actually trying to advocate for his real voters, and he doesn't fit across the party lines for his own party either. But he seemed a lot more dumb back then, and I less and less feel that way, the farther it goes.
Wasn't that insane when Rand Paul's neighbor beat his ass in the yard,
Yeah.
out in the front yard? That is just crazy. I mean, to think that a sitting U.S. senator is out mowing his grass and, his neighbor gets upset that he's using Miracle Grow or something. I don't know what happened out there that day. Or maybe his neighbor's on the homeowners association and somebody got pissed about something. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I don't remember the
And,
details, but yeah.
The next thing you know, he was I think at one point he was in critical condition. I mean, he really got messed up.
Mhm.
I don't think people realize the extent to which he got messed up. But when stuff like that
I'm going to share a tweet from President Biden.
hold on, that can definitely wait.
Yeah,
When
go
stuff
ahead.
like this happens, people frequently don't realize the extent of it. A great example of that is when oh God, George Harrison was stabbed in his home in the late 90s by some wacko self-proclaimed witch. A lot of people don't realize that he was stabbed over 50 times.
Man.
And the reason that is known is because Charlie Watts of the Rolling Stones revealed that in an interview. But had he never revealed that, people would never have realized it. And I think things happen that way in a lot of instances where somebody goes through something terrible and everybody hears about it. It's a thing that's talked about for a while, but people don't really grasp the true gravity of what really actually occurred. And that Rand Paul thing and the George Harrison.
Yeah.
When I think of Rand Paul, I always think of George Harrison of the Beatles. I just want everybody to know that. Anyway, your Joe Biden tweet.
Okay, so 48 minutes ago, he tweeted, or his campaign, at the official POTUS handle, because none of us believe that Joe Biden even knows what X is. But anyway, this is the statement. I have been briefed on the shooting at Donald Trump's rally in Pennsylvania. I'm grateful to hear that he's safe and doing well. I'm praying for him and his family and for all of those who are at the rally as we await further information. Jill and I are grateful to the Secret Service for getting him to safety. There's no place for this kind of violence in America. We must unite as one nation to condemn it. So I just wanted to put that out there, that there wasn't an official statement from the sitting president.
And I'm glad that there was no parsing of words. It was unambiguous in what the statement said. Nevertheless, now that statement's out, tomorrow, are they going to be back to business, suggesting that Trump said Nazis were fine people and suggesting that democracy is at threat if he's elected? Because those are the types of things you say to the public if you're trying to get a candidate for the presidency shot. So as far as I'm concerned, it is the rhetoric of the very man behind that tweet who is in part responsible for what happened today. So I'm glad he tweeted it, but it's rather empty to me.
Well, do you want to hear the comments right under it?
Yeah.
Okay, these are I'm not going to give any of their handles, but the very first comment that's shown to me under our handle on Twitter is, "Were you napping, or why did it take you over an hour to make a statement?" That's the first comment. And the next one goes along with what you're saying, is, "You incited this by saying Trump and his supporters would end democracy. You have blood on your hands. Resign in disgrace."
So that shows you what an obvious conclusion the thought I just expressed is for so many people.
Yeah. Well,
The second
thing
reply.
And there's a lot more like that. But then again, also, I mean, who knows if that's algorithm driven, but I doubt it. They look like they're really trending. Like one of those has more, there's more retweet. No, never mind. Yeah, there's more likes on one of them than there are the actual original one.
So I'm
but-
wondering if this is the effects of this are going to be a little more multifaceted than even I had suspected. On the one hand, it humanizes Trump, and it also even has a little bit of OG appeal to it. Hey, man got shot. There is that aspect to it as well. But there's also the aspect of, does this force the Biden campaign to dial back its "he is a threat to democracy" rhetoric? He is going to bring the world to the brink rhetoric. Does it force them to dial that back while at the same time he has been humanized by this event? Essentially, I mean, it looks like the Biden machine, or the deep state machine, the elite machine, the entrenched government machine, the administrative state machine, whatever you want to call it, its mechanisms for defeating this man have been compromised in so many ways that we can't even fully appreciate at the moment. And I mean appreciate in the context of understand. That's how I mean to use that word. We can't understand the implications of what just happened today yet. It's going to take a while.
Yeah, well, like the whole thing going back to like rhetoric, too. Like, I'm so confused. Again, I don't support either side, but before that debate night, having this amped up rhetoric of how dangerous the whole situation is if Trump were to become president, if that's the answer you're going with, and then you go and have the debate experience that happened, and then after that with the George Stephanopoulos interview for Biden, where it's asked of Biden, well, what's it mean if you lose? He's like, well, if I lose and I gave it my best, that's all that really matters. That does not line up to the message you've been given. Like, you can't go out and have such a bad debate if you really believe anything that you say.
You can't literally call him an existential threat and then out of the other side of your mouth, well, I gave it my best.
Right, exactly. It's and there's a couple of things too that were said during that Stephanopoulos interview, which I felt were just so telling in the fact that, and then also his interview, or not interview, but the press conference, because like now, like going back to like, I think this is a very important moment in like the modern history of campaigns, and at least the 2020 or 2000s, let's say, or is that the aughts? Is that what it's called? Like there's a couple of these happening quickly, which was exactly how the 60s were. There were several big moments that were like defining for a while, well, even to modern time. We're in the process of that right now. I thought that debate was going to be like, I had kind of checked out, and I was a passive consumer of politics because I'm just disgusted by the whole thing. But I felt like this is a seminal moment because you have all these young generations that are going to be watching the younger generations who are voting for the first time, who've been able to vote for the last election or two and haven't had really great candidates in terms of age connected, and then the messages that they're giving, they weren't necessarily hopeful messages. They haven't really seen election cycles like we saw them. And I think we both agree that the election cycles we lived through were just as fake as anything else. Like, it's not like they were special or nostalgic. Like, there wasn't some intrinsic value to them that's different than today. But like, I was really interested when you have these two guys who just seem to show up flat in the ways that younger generations would care. How are they going to react to it? This is going to be a monumental debate from that point of view, because we're either going to see the younger than us generations, and we're in our 40s, they're going to start looking to their own leaders that they self-generate, or they have just apathy as the message of the day. And so I felt like it was going to be important for that. So I wanted to see it. I felt like, it's important to be there for that moment. And then you saw what happened. That debate, as Joe Biden was walking on stage, you could already tell his energy was so flat that it changed the tone of everything to come from it. Like, I would give Trump, and just from like debate tactic static or point of view, like, he realized so quickly and toned down to allow Biden to have the space to do what he was doing. That was an extremely smart move on his part, because Trump was in a dangerous spot there. If he had pushed the way he did Hillary Clinton, he would have looked like a bully, and it would have been really bad for him. Both of them would have been damaged goods from it. Instead, he stayed back, made a few little comments that made him like in a movie or TV show where there's always a point of view character that's your entry into the world. He played that part for us in that debate. Like, I don't really know what's going on here. Like, I don't think he knows what's going on. Those statements were subtle enough to not be a bully, but also acknowledge that he saw what was happening up there, that it was unprecedented for us to have somebody whose campaign was pushing such a really negative campaign, but then didn't show up and meet their moment. And then you follow through with the rest of the things that happened, and you find out more and more how Biden isn't connected to what's actually happening day to day in his campaign, which I have to
Curtis, I mean, is there anyone who is watching American politics without complete blinders and without complete mental saturation from a particular political point of view in the news sources that they have chosen, who wasn't aware that Biden is asleep at the switch? I mean, that's what I'm just in awe of looking at all of these events unfold. It was so plainly obvious how this debate was going to go the other night to anybody who's been paying attention over the course of the last 3 years. And that's why I think there's so much shock out there. There's so much, people are so speechless after that debate. People who, operatives within the campaign, operatives from outside the campaign, but who are advocating for it. These very people who just hours before the debate occurred told you how with it he is, how on top of things he is, how lucid and coherent and energetic he is when they're with him in private. And then we have this train wreck put before the American people to view without filters, without blinders, and these same people are still trying to blame a cold. They're trying to blame a stuttering problem, which if you have paid any attention to Joe Biden, I've been paying attention to Joe Biden since I was 11. When I used to see
paid
clips
attention to him closely because I liked his what seemed frank but style, where he wouldn't hesitate to rip another politician. It's not until you look deep to find out how the problems he has when it comes to his public speaking. But yeah,
I have been paying attention to him since I was 11 when I started paying attention to politics, and I would see clips of him played on Rush Limbaugh's TV show. This is not a man who has ever had a stuttering problem. This is not a man who has ever had a problem presenting verbally before an audience. So where that came from, the writing was on the wall when they decided that was the route they were going to have to go in order to excuse the fact that the sitting president of the United States, has a neurodegenerative disorder.
Well, the thing is that the people behind the scenes, because I can't imagine your spouse letting that play out on the stage that it did. I don't know, man. That's so abusive to do to somebody.
Well, she seemed quite happy with it. I mean,
I know.
He answered all the questions,
really
as she
me.
said. He answered all the questions. She was very pleased that he answered all the questions. He didn't spill his milk that was handed to him after the debate. I think I heard her mention that. I can't quite recall.
It wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, like that ends up being the real story. Is all of the people who were pumping up this idea that he was ready to go, and then that happens, and like it's cognitive dissonance that occurs. But then when they double down on it, they didn't realize, and some of them still don't realize, you're like, you're expected to lose some kind of credibility because you're in a campaign. Like there's going to be things you say that are boisterous and not true, and you're probably not going to be held accountable to it to most of the people who support you. But there is a limit to that. No candidacy in the last 30 years has tested that. These people are testing it. The idea that what I'm saying doesn't have to be connected to reality, and I have video and audio and people losing their jobs in the radio business over the actions of this campaign.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
That lady who works for a black radio station, and she simply stated a fact, which was that the campaign gave her 8 questions to choose from, and she said she chose 4 of them. And something I will point out, having worked in news radio for many years, that is a very common practice. Typically, when you're about to interview somebody, particularly if that person you're about to interview was presented to you by a PR agency because that agency wants that person to be interviewed by you, they are going to supply you via whatever communications method you have at your disposal that they can get to you with. They're going to supply you with a list of suggested questions. It's happened in almost every instance working in terrestrial commercial radio where I have interviewed anybody of even semi-importance. I mean, you always get, well, in those days, you got across the fax machine. You see a piece of paper stream in. There are your questions. Choose from them. It's not explicitly stated that you have to choose from them, but they're certainly suggested questions. And I think that this girl was probably already on board with doing the campaign's bidding anyway. So she just took that suggestion of 8 questions as more than a suggestion, and she decided to demonstrate fealty to the campaign, and she did so by choosing from them, and then openly expressed what occurred, and now she's fired for it. Obviously,
Well,
there
and
are forces
all the
behind her
people-
termination.
Yeah, all the people who communicated with her on that and interviewed her, they knew too. Like, why did they allow that? That was such a terrible setup there. Because yeah, TV, radio, all of that. It's not uncommon. Like, all you have to do is like. So for me, I grew up in between 3 major cities, and in a small town that didn't have its own like TV broadcast. So I could watch Indianapolis news, Cincinnati news, and Louisville news. And when you saw your local TV personalities interviewing the same celebrity, and it's the exact same quote unquote satellite feed with the same questions and answers, the whole thing. And now with the internet, it's even easier when you do a supercut and you see everyone saying the exact same things. Like, it's not like it takes no time to realize that that wasn't real.
There's a really famous example of that with Alan Alda. It was these.
I kind of remember that because didn't Space Ghost and Space Ghost Coast to Coast use that?
I don't know about that, but the most memorable example of it that I can conjure up is Opie and Anthony Cumia, asking the most just abhorrent questions, just the most socially unacceptable questions, like, so how many people do you sexually assault typically before 2 p.m.? And Alan Alda would be like, that's a fabulous question. So really it comes down to as many as I can get my hands on, but I have to usually talk to the people I'm working with to find out what's available and what's, I mean, just like,
yeah, right. Yeah, totally.
just, totally skew the context of the question. But it was hilarious. It was so funny. It was one of the funniest things, particularly coming from Alan Alda. I mean, come on,
Right.
just this like guy who has this reputation for being so squeaky clean and nice and, advocating for the betterment of humanity. Even if you don't like his politics, he's obviously a decent human being. And that's what made it so funny. But I do want to point out, we would be remiss if we don't point out the fact that one audience member died as a result of the shooting today at the Trump rally. Another audience member is in critical condition, although I haven't looked into that since the start of this broadcast. I have no idea as to whether there's been an update in that person's condition. The shooter is dead. I should say the alleged shooter. The person
Right.
that we are going to be told is the shooter is dead. There is a human being that we are going to be told is the shooter. That person is dead. I'll frame it that way. You can take that however you want it.
Lee Harvey Oswald's trending right now. It's interesting.
This is really the 1-2 punch. I mean, you had this pulling back of the curtain, the revealing of the emperor's lack of clothing in that debate. And by the emperor, I don't just mean Joe Biden. I mean the mainstream media that gaslit everybody for 3 years and told everybody everything's fine. Don't worry about it. It's all good. Trump is the one who should have been 25th Amendmented. That same mainstream media, their nakedness has been revealed. Joe Biden's nakedness has been revealed. So many things that people thought they could hang their hat on no longer have been cast in doubt and have been revealed to be, at least in that specific instance, lacking in credibility. Therefore, the obvious conclusion for any thinking human is, what else lacks credibility? What else have I been lied to about? There's the one punch. The two punch is what happened today. This is a 1-2 punch that I think is going to entirely upset the paradigm of this political campaign. It is going to, in every way imaginable, sweep everything off the table, and it's going to reset the chessboard. The implications of what occurred today, nobody paying attention to this at the moment can truly fully understand. We have a dead audience member. Trump is going to show up with bandages on his head at that funeral. I mean, it's the imagery.
That's a weird thing too. Like, is there any scenario, just throw it out there because you just made me think of this. Is there any scenario where Biden and Trump come together for that audience member's funeral? There's not, is there?
I don't think so. There's no way that family member is going to allow. As far as I'm concerned, if that family is a thinking collection of human beings, and chances are really good that they are going to blame the rhetoric of Joe Biden for the fact that there was a gun there on this day today.
Yeah.
Indirectly, they're going to blame him for the death of their family member.
Yeah. Like going back to our crisis management firm that you and I are starting tonight officially, that would be the play from the Biden side, is to stand with, condemning that action. Just so you know, Richard in the chat has solved the case. He said an anti-Bell Gabber did it, that he can confirm it from his reporting.
Solved what case?
The case of the shooter.
Oh, well, I'm all for whatever sleuthing people are doing out there. I'm sure it'll make for an interesting read. It's going to be really crazy to see how things unfold over the course of the coming weeks. We can't understand how this is going to affect the campaign. Imagery and feeling. When you see that photo of Trump standing on a stage, imagine yourself somebody who really doesn't pay any attention to politics at all. You don't know anything about any of it. But suddenly you hear this thing happens today. And of course, you know of Trump. He's been one of the most famous people in the world for 40 years now. So you hear about this thing happening, and he was the president for 4 years. So you hear about this thing happening today. Naturally, it catches your attention. And then you see the video, you see the imagery, you see that photo that was taken in front of the podium as he rose up and pumped his fist in the air with blood streaming down his face. Those people who see that and haven't up to this point had a dog in this hunt or a dog in this race, whatever the term is, I always screw that up. Makes me wonder if I have some sort of neurodegenerative disease myself that I can't.
I would just like to let the audience know that Mike will also be doing a cognitive test after this.
Those people who have never been invested in politics whatsoever are going to see what happened today, and they are going to react. And I can assure you, as someone who understands the human condition, who understands the human psyche, who understands how people tick, I know people. If there's anything I know, it is people. And when people who are not invested in politics,
who knows people.
I know people. And when people see how this went today, people who are not invested in politics, who don't have an emotional attachment to any of it, they are going to run out and vote for Donald Trump in November. Those people are going to. And by the way, I want to make something very clear. Before you do, I want to make something very clear. I said a little earlier in the show, yes, I do support Donald Trump and his reelection bid. But I want to make it very clear. I don't do so because I think anything is going to fundamentally change if he gets elected. I do not believe anything is going to fundamentally change if he gets elected. I believe the forces that are arrayed in the Western world against regular people, against common people, are so powerful and so entrenched and so permanent that there's no single man who's going to get elected to the presidency and make a difference in any of that. And even if he manages to make a difference in any of that, the dark cloud is just going to filter its way back into the water once the 4-year rinsing concludes. So I'm not under the impression that things are going to get better in some tremendous way if Donald Trump is elected. I am obviously aware that there are certain specifics you can put your finger on, like Supreme Court nominees and things of that nature, various executive branch departmental policies and directives that the president can establish through executive order. But again, those are just executive orders from the chief executive to the departments under his purview, and those can be changed just as easily as they were established by the next president. So I'm not under the impression that things are going to change in any huge way and the seas are going to part and angels are going to descend down upon us and everything is going to be groovy. The reason I support him is because in my mind, it pisses off all the right people. That's it. I'm in it for the lulls, as the kids used to say.
Yeah.
I want to have a good time, and I want to see people who hate me and don't like me and who do not care about my interests and who, on the contrary, actively act against my interests on a daily basis. I want to see those people rendered upset and angry. And if Donald Trump getting elected does that, then I'm going to have a great time. I'm going to enjoy that. So that's my reasoning. Carry on.
Yeah. So I want to go back to what you were saying, though, about the average person who is, they only dip their toes into the stream of politics. And then when they come back for this, what they're seeing is impactful. The problem, timeline wise, if you're not pro-Trump, is the Biden experience during that debate has amplified this whole situation of concern because the sitting president has problems and showed that with all the stuff we've already talked about without rehashing the whole thing. That has brought a lot of eyeballs to this presidential campaign way earlier than we typically would see it, and also created a lot of concern. The timing, without trying to make this sound like a political event, but you could go that conspiracy route. The timing could not have been better for Trump because you have the majority of the population is now actively just trying to figure out, what is this all about? Why is everyone focused on it? It's a water cooler moment that everyone's come together for and concern. And then you have this happen, which is going back to your, what I'll call the Michael humanizing hypothesis. All those eyes now have something to coalesce around. And that's the one thing America always wants, is make this very easy for me to know what direction I should be pointing towards. And I think this probably will do that. Like, you're going to see a tide turn as a result of what's happened. And I would say so far, like, we're only several, like, what you do in the first 24 hours of this, whether you're the person that it happened to or the person that you're competing against that had an event occur to them, to the way both sides react in that first 24 hours becomes solidified in the memory of everyone. Because, like you mentioned earlier at the start of the show, how important imagery, video, and the words around it, all of those matter. Those get locked into our brains, and you can't change it after that. Or it's really hard to. Like, again, it requires going one-on-one and changing the hearts and minds of every person who's solidified in a point of view. And this is all, it's on tape. Like, the debate is on tape. What happened tonight to Trump at that rally, and then, like you mentioned, somebody potentially has died, maybe two people if you count the alleged shooter. That's the narrative that will stay with us on this for the rest of the campaign and the rest of the presidency for either of them. Like, I hope that this is the last event of violence that occurs during it. Like, this is a wake up call to calm both sides down. But if we want to jump to that next step of what happens next, my worry is retaliation. Like, I was looking through Twitter just a few minutes ago at responses of people, and the very staunch supporters of Trump, like that were like what you would call the Trumpers, they're like, now it's you took your shot, now it's our turn. That worries me as an approach. Like, I want to see more of, like I said earlier, that really worries me because there's a lot of it. And
You make it sound like just the way you worded that, it made it sound like a PR agency sat down with a client. Look, we've got a way that we think we want to go about this.
look,
They took a shot at ours, and now we're going to take a shot at theirs. Thoughts?
yeah. So like, I think there's synergy with the idea that they went with a 22. We should consider the same. Yeah. Oh, Gladys in the chat says they tried to get Art too. This is probably the same cabal behind the scenes.
Well, you knew when they came for Art Bell, you knew Donald Trump was next. I mean, it was such an obvious
inevitable.
connection to make. It was like, can you draw a straight line? Then you're going to make this conclusion. I don't know any other way to see the world around me.
That's right.
Another way in which I believe I understand people. I know how people think. I know how people work. People like to support an underdog, and people do not like seeing someone taken out of a competition unfairly. Whatever that competition is, and whatever the method is by which that person has been unfairly taken out of that competition, people do not like that. And even if it isn't necessarily something that was under anybody's control, people do not like that. I think back to the election victory of Mel Carnahan over John Ashcroft, who later became George W. Bush's Attorney General. George W. Bush's Attorney General, that'd be the second Bush, became his Attorney General. Prior to that, he ran for governor in the state of Missouri and lost to a dead man, Mel Carnahan, who had died only a
You
few
and I should
short
host a politics show. I mean, those are some amazing references you're pulling out there.
who had died only weeks prior to the election. I think it was actually days prior to the election, Mel Carnahan died. And yet, a dead man beat John Ashcroft, which in retrospect, John Ashcroft was such a piece of shit. It's really a good thing that he won, even if it had to be someone who I otherwise would have politically nothing to do with. People do not like seeing someone elevated as a result of circumstances that they did not earn. People don't like seeing someone taken out unfairly, particularly when it comes to violence in our politics or death in our politics. People feel sympathy if something like the Carnahan situation happens, and they just want to send a message, give a final tip of the hat, a final salute, and that's what they'll do. And that is analogous, I believe, to the situation that occurred today. We are going to see a similar result, only it's going to be protracted over the course of months rather than in the Mel Carnahan situation, an election that occurred days after the event. And that event, of course, was very different, but nevertheless, it was a removal of a man from a competition by means other than the expected, mechanics of how an election would work. He died in a plane crash. And then his wife, Mel Carnahan's wife, I believe Jean Carnahan was her name, wound up taking over. And, or was that a Senate seat or a governor? That was a Senate race. That was a Senate race. That was not a governor's race. I'm sorry. Now that I think back, because Mel Carnahan had already been governor.
We're going to
was
have to
running
fact check
for the
this in
Senate.
real time.
Please do, because I could be wrong about that. But anyway, Jean Carnahan wound up being appointed, I believe, to the Senate seat after Mel Carnahan died, and John Ashcroft lost. And that's why George W. Bush wound up having to choose him as his Attorney General, was just because it was such a humiliation to John Ashcroft to lose to a guy who had been turned into dust in a multi-hundreds of miles per hour plane crash at high velocity into the earth. To lose to that was such a humiliation to John Ashcroft that George W. Bush had to give him some sort of a job, and did.
Yeah, I just brought up the wiki for Jean Carnahan and Mel, and looking at.
It was a Senate seat, right?
Yeah, it is Senate seat from Missouri. I wish I had brought this up quicker just to go along to. Basically, I'm the presenter today as you speak about the history of politics from the 2000s.
Yeah, that was really something. See, good examples. I interviewed Mel Carnahan. I interviewed John Ashcroft. I've interviewed a lot of these weird people that have just sort of come into contact with me that you wouldn't otherwise think I would have had any reason to be in contact with at any point because I'm such a non-entity. But however it happened, I wound up I've bumped elbows with a lot of people that, for whatever reason,
Yeah, I
wouldn't
wish
have expected
you
me to.
would have had like a YouTube channel back then that you could have talked to them, not on a radio show, but like, I don't know. I'm thinking back to like when you were talking to George Norrie back in the day, like to be able to have that kind of conversation where you're not concerned about like you have an FCC license behind the conversation you're having.
One time I interviewed Jesse White, who is the Secretary of State of the state of Illinois, and I believe still is. And this guy was such a douche. And when he showed up, here's this guy that lives in a state that's one of the most arduous states in which to own a firearm. In the state of Illinois, if you want to own a firearm, even like a single shot 20 gauge shotgun, like it only holds one shell and you have to pull the hammer back each time just to fire that one shell and then break the gun in half to get the shell to pop out, like one of those, like an old timey shotgun. This is the gun that I owned at the time that I lived in the state of Illinois. And I had to go to the police department and register this firearm, this dopey shotgun. Like I had to go to them and I had to fill out paperwork, pay a fee. I mean, it is a tangled mess in the state of Illinois to own a firearm. And if you want to get any more adventurous than a firearm like the one I just described, the process is even more arduous. Well, I'm at work and Jesse White, the Secretary of State of the state of Illinois, shows up, and he's there to be interviewed by me. And he shows up in an SUV with complete limo blacked out windows. The SUV has bullet-resistant glass. You can tell they're just really thick. It's so obvious when a vehicle has been outfitted with bullet resistance. And he gets out, but before he gets out, two Asian guys got out before him, each of which was carrying what appeared to be a fully automatic weapon. Not pistols. They looked like Uzis. I'm not really much of a gun guy, so I'm not sure what exactly they were carrying, but these were high-powered, definitely semi-automatic, but appeared to be the kind of weapon that would just be ready to spray something. I mean, they were really loaded for bear, these guys. They get out of the vehicle first. And mind you, this is in a tiny little town. There's no threat here to this guy. No one even knows he's there. And he gets out. These guys get out first, and then he gets out and walks in. I just thought to myself, oh, the irony of this guy who lives in this system and advocates for this system. And here he is making sure he has two fully armed guys getting out to survey the situation for him before he even has the balls to step out of his vehicle. Isn't this just adorable? But I was so annoyed by him that I decided to troll him when he came in to be interviewed by me, because he was just a condescending douche. So when he came in, this interview was not live on the radio. I couldn't have done this had it been live on the radio. So he was just sitting at my desk in the newsroom. And he comes in and he sits down at my desk, and I put a tape recorder between us and we start talking. And I decided the way I was going to troll him was by pretending I didn't realize he's not the Secretary of State of the United States of America. So I kept asking him questions that you would ask of the leader, the head of the U.S. State Department.
Yeah, diplomacy.
Rather than questions that you would ask the Illinois Secretary of State, which would be questions about driver's licenses and stupid procedural stuff like that. He was so annoyed with me. Oh my God. By the time he left, he was so disgusted with me. But that's one of my fondest memories in the years that I worked in news radio, was my interview with Illinois Secretary of State Jesse White, who to this day believes I thought he was the Secretary of State of the United States of America, third or fourth in line for the presidency.
Can somebody? So I brought up his Wikipedia. Can somebody go add like a footnote about that? Try to find that interview. I want to point out like one thing
no
really
way.
quick for tech stuff as you were doing that. If you ever want to see some fun conversation, most people don't ever do this, but you're looking at an article on Wikipedia, and it's like I was just kind of skimming through this article of him. Always click on the talk tab because you're going to get all this fun behind the scenes fighting. Like people don't, the level of fighting on a Wikipedia article is better than anywhere else on the internet. So like you'll see here, somebody brought up the fact that Jesse White's daughter had drug charges that were dropped against her, and that there's controversy
did.
about her. But then you go down a little bit further, and there's this great thing where somebody had said that, and this is interesting anyway too, especially after that story you just said, that there's a statement on here that says that Jesse White was a member of the Democrat Party. He served as the 37th Secretary of State of Illinois from 1999 to 2023. He was the
Isn't that
longest
amazing?
serving. Yeah, he's the longest serving American to hold this office.
Telling me that guy was the best they could find for 20, 23, 24 years.
Yeah, that's amazing. Anyway, that person that you interviewed held the office longer than anyone else. But like, what's great is the comment someone added back to it, like with this saying, the longest serving American to hold what? Secretary of State of Illinois? Surely that office has been only ever been held by Americans. Like, I don't know, just if you want to see the story behind the story, always go to the talk tab of a Wikipedia article.
This tech tip of the day brought to you by Alpo, a dog food you can trust. Alpo, available at stores today.
Fido likes it.
Well, I guess that concludes this show, unless you can think of anything pressing to add to it, Curtis.
I think this is keep it tight to this.
Trump got shot. I'm getting my Galaxy S24 Ultra in a few days. Curtis is going to switch from iPhone. Dex is going to be great. New paradigms are happening. It's going to be totally tits.
Yeah, really quick. We probably won't be able to do it fast enough, but we have several people here in the chat now. If someone can try that link and try to join, I just want to see, does it work?
Oh, the call link. Yeah. Actually, if someone could try that before we dump out of here,
Yeah, that
it
would be nice.
nice to say hi to a couple of people. I'm walking across a bridge currently that has wood slats going across it, and I'm gripping my phone so tightly.
Can you do me a favor and make sure that like you're like in selfie pose taking video of that? Because if there's an earthquake as it's going by, you need to run really fast.
Well, it's entirely possible.
Do you know the reference I'm going by there?
No.
There was a George Senda moment like that where he's walking across like a little bridge similar to what you just described, and an earthquake happens. It was
Really?
good. Yeah.
I didn't know that occurred. Oh, you see that, dude? That is a reference. Nobody. I mean, I don't think anyone.
Oh, I guarantee everyone in this chat knows what I'm talking
Really?
about. They knew it as you were, they were all thinking that too as you were saying that you're on a bridge with wooden
Was it a
slats.
joke that his fatness caused the bridge to shake? Is that the joke, or was
Oh, I'm
there
sure some of
legitimately
them
an
went that
earthquake?
direction. I just liked his reaction on it. It was interesting.
You know something? When I was in the 5th grade in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, there was an
Interreach
earthquake.
thanks you for that info there.
Which info? Oh, yeah,
Just
you're
keep going.
welcome. When I was in the 5th grade in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, there was an earthquake that occurred at about 9-something in the morning. And I remember it was happening in the midst of this geologist I think he was a geologist, named Iben Browning. And he had postulated that in December 3rd of that year, the moon was going to be physically closer to the Earth than it had been in some crazy amount of years. And as a result of this proximity to the moon, we were more likely, through gravitational forces, to have earthquakes than at any point in recorded history, I guess, or at least in very recent history, moderately recent history. So he predicted that on that year, his name again, Iben Browning, I-B-E-N, as I believe how you spell that name. He predicted that on December 3rd of that year, there was going to be a massive earthquake on the New Madrid Fault Line in southeast Missouri, rivaling that of 1812, in which the ground could be seen waving like the ocean as the shock waves reverberated from the epicenter and church bells on the East Coast rang loudly as the reverberations made their way to the East Coast. He predicted that an earthquake rivaling that was going to occur. So everybody was in a panic. Everybody was
remember
just
this.
insane. People were going to keep their kids out of school on that day, December 3rd. Businesses were going to be closed. Everybody was just in utter and complete fear. It was a panic that even COVID and the panic that people exhibited and experienced and lived through during COVID doesn't rival what I experienced in the December 3rd panic brought about by Iben Browning's prediction. And it never happened, but in the run up to it was, I believe, in the same year, in the run up to December coming, I think it happened in like September, this earthquake. I just recall it was like a 4.7 on the Richter scale. At the time, they used the Richter scale rather than this stupid new magnitude rating that they've gone to, which now, whenever there's an earthquake and somebody tells you what its magnitude was, nobody has the slightest effing
Right.
clue how strong
Compared
the
to-
earthquake was, because we've all lost our point of reference now because someone couldn't just leave well enough alone. Somebody had to come in and meddle. So now we all talk about magnitude when it comes to earthquakes rather than just saying, look, it was a 4.7 on the Richter scale, and we all understand what that means. So it was a 4.7, and I remember putting my ear to the ground, like on the hard tile of the floor, as my fifth grade teacher shouted in exactly this tone, "Under the desks!" As it started out, she said it exactly like that, Miss Hudson. Under the desks! So we all got under the desks, and while everybody else was weeping and yelling for mommy, I had the consciousness of the moment to place my ear on the floor and listen on this hard floor and just listen to the earth underneath me rumbling. And it's a sound I've not forgotten. I guess I don't know what my point really is in telling you the story, other
what
than
did it sound like? Like, can you just?
I can't
compare it?
describe it. It's just it's got a depth to it and a dynamic range to it that no sound I've ever heard compares to.
Which makes
and-
sense because those level of forces you've never heard in any other comparative moment.
Really, no, that release of energy. No, you're right. I've never, and that's what sound is a release of energy.
Mhm.
And you're right. I have not heard anything comparable. I've not had the example, the
That's just so-
opportunity.
It's interesting because I'm so in the moment of, again, like we were talking about earlier, I'm thinking about what's the potential moment of injury. I wouldn't have thought to do that in that situation.
I don't know why I thought to do that, but I'm really glad I did. I guess
Yeah.
I just understood. Look, these guys are all acting like little bitches here. I'm going to go into geologist mode, and so that's what I did.
But-
And
I brought up Iben Browning's Wikipedia, and he's known for erroneous earthquake prediction. Let's go to his
Yeah.
talk tab.
oh boy, let's see what he had. What year was that? Surely it must be.
It was
pretty-
not. Yeah, so it's in here. They talk about it. So I'll just go back to his official, like what's been approved for it. Browning received notoriety for his erroneous prediction that a major earthquake would occur on the New Madrid Fault around December 2nd or 3rd of 1990. And I'll just stop at this next part. This prediction had no scientific legitimacy and was largely ignored by credentialed seismologists who thought it would give the prediction undeserved attention if they were to debunk it in public. So yeah, you're right on for the date too. I remember
I
that
just
too.
didn't recall the year. But yeah, 1990, that is it. And people were in an absolute panic. And it causes me to think about the broader scope of my life and the lives of every older person. I'm now an older person. You know, I'm in my mid 40s now. It's kind of funny for anyone who started listening to my podcasts in 2005. I mean, there are those people out there who have been listening to my internet bullcrap since 2005. Like, I'm not a known quantity. I'm not a successful internet broadcaster, but nevertheless, there are people who have been paying attention to my bullcrap for a lot of years. And it's just weird to me to think that some of these people started paying attention to what I was doing on the internet in 2005, 2006, and now here I am, in mid 40s. I mean, just it's crazy how things happen. But what I'm thinking about is the broader scope of all of our lives as we age. And my reaction, for instance, to COVID, my reluctance to feel panic, my lack of willingness to be panicked. And you think back on your life and all of these invitations to panic that have been given to us, presented to us. It happens multiple times over the course of a normal person's lifetime where there are events where a person is encouraged to panic, encouraged to believe the sky is falling. And then what happens? A problem gets solved, a solution is found, or it just stops being talked about. It goes away. Whatever it is, if you've lived long enough, you see enough panics, enough hysterias come and go that you eventually reach a point where you understand what warrants panic, what warrants excitement, and what really doesn't. And I think most people, as they get older, have that common experience. They are far less likely to get lathered up about current events than the young, because the young simply have not had enough life experience to understand that this is a normal aspect of life, that you're presented with these opportunities to panic, you're presented with these moments where you're encouraged to panic, and it usually winds up being for naught.
Yeah, well, I also think that's why there's value in having a multi-generational approach to your or the way you intake something. You should talk to someone older than you and younger than you, because you might be lulled into a false sense of comfort that you need to hear the sky is falling approach of somebody younger, and then you need to have someone else tell you, remember, this is like the fourth time there's been something like this. You, trust your gut.
I think
it's good to have all of that.
I can't tell you how many times there were in my youth I would hear about something that would pop up, and I'd go to my grandma and talk to her about it and try to get her as worked up about it as I am.
Mm-hmm.
And she just was never having it. You know, she just understood that most stuff is bullcrap. most of the things that we are told to panic about are just bullcrap. And that really is true. It's sort of an axiom of life. And if I could ever give a young person a tip in an effort to help them traverse the madness of this existence, probably if I could only give them 3 tips, one of those tips would be, don't panic. Things are going to be fine.
I wish I could have played that always wear sunscreen music as you were saying that.
Well, I guess
right,
nobody's going to call in.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get a call. We'll have to try that again next time, because, this would have been interesting to hear some other points of view. But, hey, you all didn't call in, so that didn't happen. So,
Okay.
You want to
Bye.